Hello, everyone. Welcome back to She Runs Strong with Nikki Friedman and myself, Shona Hendricks. We're powered by Coach Perry, and today we have a very, very special episode. I'm really excited for this one, Nikki. We seem to be doubling up on the Nickies. I know we had Nikki de Villiers the other day, but today really, really special. We have Dr. Nicky Keay joining us, which is really awesome. And she's an endocrinologist and a Red S specialist based in the UK, an active ballet dancer and teacher, and I'm sure she's going to tell us a little bit more about that. But she's also an author of some books, Myths and Menopause and Hormones, and Hormones, Health and Human Potential, a guide to understanding your hormones to optimize your health and performance. But Nikki, I know you're really excited about today. Before I bring Dr. Keay on, how are you doing? And tell us a little bit about what we're going to dive into today.
I'm good. I'm really good, and I'm really excited for this episode. I follow Nikki's work for Dr. Nicky's work for a long time, and I'm really excited to ask a few questions here and get into the roots of some hormones and health and how we can optimize our running, which is always what we're talking about here as well.
Yeah,
so
there we go. Dr. Keay, or Nicky Keay, so we can just decipher between the two Nickies. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. Really, really excited to have you here. First off, let's maybe start with you. Tell us a little bit about you and where you come from, how you got into this journey of becoming an endocrinologist and within female sports or hormones in particular.
Well, first of all, thanks so much for inviting me on. This is I'm so passionate about hormones, as we're going to discover, and it's always an absolute pleasure, an honor to come and chat on these sorts of things and really delve into the nitty gritty. So, why am I so passionate about this? As you said, it starts a long way back. You know, as a youngster, as a teenager, I was always into my sport. I was doing competitive swimming. I was playing tennis. And ballet, as you mentioned. So I was active myself, and I was always sort of puzzled and curious. It's like, I wonder how this works exactly in my body. You know, I know instinctively if I go to my ballet classes and I practice hard and etc., then, you know, why am I doing that? Because I enjoy it, but also because I know that will lead to improvements and I'll get better, etc. But it's like, well, how exactly does that work inside the body? And so I knew I wanted to study medicine, number one, and secondly, you know, something to do with sport exercise. And whenever I said, oh, I want to eventually do something to do with sports medicine, people said, oh, you want to do injuries? I was like, no. I mean, injuries, in some cases, injuries happen. For example, unfortunately, my son's just had a bike crash, and so stuff happens, but a lot of injuries are actually the contributing factors are because we haven't got the right balance of our training and recovery and nutrition, and this causes the hormones not to adapt or drive those positive adaptations we're seeking, and hence predisposes to injury. So I realized from an early start in my medical training that actually hormones were going to be the key, because they were going to explain how what we do affects our health and our performance. So that's how come I decided, number one, on hormones. And then go forward many, many years, because the training for a doctor takes a heck of a long time. You have to go through all the general training and jobs and blah, 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 blah. And then I did some sports clinics in Australia way back, got some experience. And then, eventually got back to what I was aiming for as a teenager, to get into this niche of working particularly with athletes, dancers, to help them, guide them on to reach their full potential, as the title of my book suggests, but doing that through, as far as possible, so their understanding of what the hormones do for them, if you will, and how to harness the hormones throughout their life, from, you know, the youngsters in training, and then all the way through for female athletes, at least through menopause and beyond. There is life after menopause, newsflash. So quite. So anyway, that's how come I got involved in all of this, and that's my passion, to give people that information and understanding.
Brilliant. And you have been a dancer all that time, just to...
Yeah, so ballet particularly has always been my passion. I was taken along to my first ballet class, my grandmother, when I was 4 anyway. And so I've always continued doing that, even during, you know, medical training. I was always doing several classes a week, doing amateur shows, etc. And I'm still doing 4 classes a week, not so much performances because that takes a lot of time, but I've retired from point work, but I still do ballet all along, but also the other things I mentioned, like swimming. I used to do competitive swimming, but obviously that's like, I think for many, getting up every single morning at 5 a.m. and training after work or school, it just gets too much, can't fit it in. But I still go swimming a couple of times a week because it's a good, efficient workout for me, if I can put it like that. And I still enjoy tennis, and I do other stuff, windsurfing and things like this. But, every day, from day to day exercise point of view, ballet is my mainstay. Yes.
Awesome.
Sound very active there. Okay. Putting up the gym. This is brilliant. Okay, so obviously you've lived your life through sport a lot. So it's brilliant to have you in this podcast to talk about stuff. Can we just kind of take it back? So we really deal with women from 40 to 45. And over, so the sort of masters athlete predominantly. And so this is a tricky phase of life. So can we maybe just dig into sort of roughly what's happening for us over this time of life and why things are changing for us, just in a sort of, I guess, in a brief explanation before we dig into things a bit more?
Well, every woman will go through what I describe as the female hormone odyssey, right? It's a little bit of a journey. So I know you said we want to focus on that age group, but actually to understand that, we do have to go back a little bit and start at the beginning. And women are unique, obviously, it goes without saying, but particularly with their hormones. Lots of the systems we share in common with men. And men also have a reproductive axis, but it works very, very differently to ours. So ours, we should rejoice because we have the most complicated, beautiful hormone choreography. In other words, the menstrual cycle. And, as a teenager, this is when the things start getting going and the periods start. Often a problematic time, by the way, teenagers, periods starting, mood changes, heavy periods, painful periods, etc. And then hopefully they settle down into more of a regular pattern during those menstruating years. And then at the end of this, progressing through this female hormone odyssey, then the next big sort of sea shift, as it were, in hormones is the perimenopause, menopause. And so the ovaries are now retiring. So they're reducing their production of the two main ovarian hormones, estradiol, most active form of estrogen, and progesterone. And so actually the perimenopause, I liken it to reverse pattern of what happened in the teenage years. In the teenage years, the hormones were getting going, a little bit stumbling. They needed some dress rehearsals to get going. And equally, when they retire, they don't retire willingly, if I could say it like that. They keep wanting to come back for another performance and things like this. So lots of the things that perimenopausal women experience are very similar to what the teenager did. Mood changes, changes in menstrual cycle, heavy periods, painful periods, worsening PMFs, all this sort of thing. And then ultimately the ovaries do fully retire and the hormones are now at least stable, I should say, but stable low, which also now has health implications, considerations, because these hormones, not only do they affect our mood and how we feel, because they act on the brain, our cognitive function, but also all the physical things. Estradiol is the queen hormone for bone health, full stop, that's it. Men have to convert some of their testosterone to estrogen for their bone health. Also, these hormones are very important for cardiovascular health. I mean, so many things, and they're very important, especially the estrogen. It's what we call an anabolic hormone, builds up muscle and bone. So now you can see, okay, so perimenopause, the hormones are a little bit all over the shop, and then they're declining. So already we can anticipate what those challenges might be. And it's all about, in my opinion, anticipation and understanding and accepting. This is the female hormone odyssey. Every single woman will experience menopause at some point in her life. For the vast majority, the average age, for example, of menopause is 51. So you can start getting perimenopausal symptoms, even late 30s or 40s, something like this. And so, it's there's a lot of negative talk about this. It's like, oh gosh, it's awful. It's like, hold on a minute. If you've been told about this or understood this at the beginning, that this is your journey, this is your odyssey, this is what's going to happen, and being prepared, as it were, and anticipating what you might need to do, I think that's really hopefully things are improving in that sense, and hopefully what we're discussing now will also be helpful for women trying to navigate that journey.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because as a kid you are very much warned puberty is coming and this is going to happen, and it's really talked about. Whereas for me, I'm 55 now. I remember sort of being in the blur of it, and then somebody mentioning it to me, and I was like, oh, right, okay. I thought that was a bit later.
Well,
but,
yeah, exactly. And I think that's another important point, that it's, why shouldn't we should tell, the youngsters. I mean, we don't have to tell them every single detail about menopause, but at least they should know that word, because it's really annoying. It's like you're being given this book to read and you tell about this book, and it's like, but we're not going to tell you what happens in the last chapter.
Yeah.
Like, well, hold on a minute. That makes no sense. It's like, what's the conclusion of this? You want to know. So I think, and that's also worked for for me as well. Part of my job, I talk a lot to masters athletes, but actually a lot of my work is with the youngsters and going into dance schools, going into the clubs, telling the youngsters, we mentioned the word menopause, right? We don't go into the nitty gritty I would do for a masters athlete audience, but at least they know what the chapter is in that book towards the end, so that when they don't, because during that time of flux of in perimenopause, when the hormones are all over the shop, brain fog, etc., like you say, you don't recognize it in yourself. It's like, and you can get really scared. It's like, what the heck's happening to me? What's happening? I have a lovely contributor to my book, Myths of Menopause, and she's actually professor at UCL, where I work, of cognition, aging, all this sort of thing. And her chapter is entitled, Am I Losing My Mind? And she describes how there she is, the professor of cognitive function and aging, standing up at a meeting. Right, these are my 3 points, 1, 2, and it had gone. And so you see what I mean. It's all about having that understanding, anticipating things, knowing what you need to do and prepare, just like you prepare for a race. Targeting your race. It's like, okay, this is my schedule to lead up to that. It just, it's a shame that to date that final chapter has been withheld.
I think it's awesome, and it's really one of the goals of this podcast is to change that narrative. And so, Nicky and I have had these conversations. I'm turning 41 this year, and so I think I'm going into this very differently to how perhaps Nicky did, and it's really awesome to see that, firstly, and also what I really like about how this is changing, and hopefully more and more and more, and that's why we want to continue this conversation, is I think the more we talk about it, the less it's a taboo subject or a dirty word or whatever, the more females can also feel like, okay, I'm not alone in this. I'm not the only person who's necessarily going through it and experiencing that my training is being, that I'm struggling to recover, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so yeah, I think it's so important to continue this conversation, and yeah, I'm just glad that it is changing for sure. So yeah.
But just picking up on that, the point you made about, the taboo topic. I mean, because it is difficult to, female hormones. I always make the, slightly tongue-in-cheek comment that if as a woman you're ever told you're very hormonal, you should always take that as a compliment, because you're being compared to Hormone, who was the goddess of effort, energy, and action. So I think that, as women, we just push on. We don't want to make excuses. And so we just push on and won't say anything. But by the way, men get old as well. So also, I think part of this taboo is also linked with getting older, right? Because for the majority of women, menopause is average age 51. There will be some earlier, some later, but that's the average age range between 45 and 55. So, that is also a time in life when there's often lots of changes happening. If you've had children, they're probably leaving home, or maybe at work there are changes, and changes in which age group you're in, and all sorts of stuff is changing. So you lose your confidence, frankly. And also people, and then you feel, oh gosh, I'm getting old and things like this. We all remember. You remember when we were youngsters and we used to think that 50 was ancient, right? By the way, anyway, but now I've moved my goalposts. It's like, no, 90's old, okay, but come on, 60's nothing. Anyway, so, I think that's another part of this topic. Female hormones in general is not, it's getting better, but as you say, but also this perception, particularly in our society. For example, in Japan, they don't even have a word for menopause. They call it, they do. They call it the second spring, because in Japan, the elders are revered for their wisdom. Just saying, right? So there's lots of things we need to tackle and look at. And it's
Definitely.
and I think the message is getting through, because we're seeing more and more women in those older age groups and the master's age group. So that's great. We are getting there, but it's just to point out there are some little hurdles still to be things to be addressed.
Oh, absolutely. It's just a sort of bit of fear mongering that it's this big change, and actually it's just not that bad as people make out. So just if our hormones our ovaries retiring, I like that, and our hormones are dropping, how is that going to affect our performance then? Because we're interested in running marathons and getting PBs and all this sort of stuff. So how is that going to have an effect then if these hormones are dropping? What's going to happen to us?
So perimenopause, well, first of all, the sort of physical, psychological effects of the hormones changing. So perimenopause, so we should distinguish between perimenopause and menopause. So perimenopause is the in-between time as the hormones are changing. And actually the first hormone to drop is actually progesterone, because you're not maybe ovulating on such a regular basis. So the first thing that happens is actually your cycle length might get shorter and less predictable. So number one, that's already annoying. And if you're, practicing and training and whatever, also we know that you're more likely to get a heavier period. Women can even get flooding, really dreadful stuff, because estrogen's still going strong, but progesterone's kind of left the party early. So it's like, so that's why. And then we discussed the effect of these hormones on the brain, cognitive function, brain fog. So, you're feeling not so good and forgetful, also disturbs your sleep pattern. We all know what it feels like. If you don't have a good night's sleep, then everything seems worse, and it's difficult to get the motivation to train and everything. So these are the challenges specifically, mainly of symptoms, I would say, during that perimenopausal period, which might be a challenge for you to stick to your training schedule and think, oh gosh, I don't think I can do this, and all that, that for sort of physical reasons, symptoms, if I could put it like that. But then as you progress closer to the ovaries fully retiring, so switching from part-time to fully retired, then the estradiol now definitely also starts to decline. And estradiol, I mentioned, is an anabolic hormone. So it builds muscle, builds bone. So now you might start to get some other things that actually you're doing your training, and hopefully you're doing your strength training as well. But, but you're not seeing the gains that you would expect. You'll feel that you're losing muscle tone. You feel that you're gaining body fat, especially in the midriff area, depositing more visceral fat because the anabolic hormone's declining. So there are many things that you will notice which might hamper your training schedule, your build up for a race, whatever, be those sort of more psychological, mental things, if I could call it like that, because of the poor sleep and whatever, but also actually physical things. Because I call it the Pandora's box, all the symptoms of perimenopause. In addition to the menstrual cycle changing, you can also get random aches and pains not related to injury. So if something's really hurting and you're feeling stiff and horrible, again, it's difficult to train, so there is, but women are very different. And so, I think lots of master athletes come to see me. Well, first of all, they apologize. Oh, I'm not an athlete. Because maybe they're not actually competing, but it's like I wouldn't call myself, I'm not competing, but I definitely exercise a lot. So whether you're competing or not, if you're doing regular exercise, intentional, whatever it is for enjoyment or whether it is for a competition, that's number one. And number two, minimizing the symptoms. Oh, well, actually, it's not too bad. It's like, hold on, how much sleep are you getting? Oh, well, I wake up all the time. My sleep disturbed. Hot flushes is a big one that lots of women describe. Oh, no, I'm not hot at all. Well, actually, now you come to mention it, I wake up dripping in sweat about twice a night. It's like, what? And that's quite a common symptom. So I think that, just being honest with yourself, not giving in or being weak, but just, clarifying, writing it down. What are the challenges, what are the things that I'm experiencing, and then you connect the dots. It's like, oh, actually all of these symptoms are probably perimenopause. My hormones are changing, you see.
Yeah, I think sorry, Nicky, you go ahead.
I just have one question with that.
Please go.
If the estradiol is dropped and the anabolic hormone has dropped. Does that mean once we're through menopause that basically we can make no gains in terms of building muscle?
Well, it's more challenging. It's more challenging. And also the other hormone that drops in men and women as we get older is growth hormone, right? Growth hormone, it's not just about growing for children, or obviously it's higher in children, but as adults, we still produce that for maintaining good, favorable body composition, right? So muscles and bones also. And so, yeah, we do have a double whammy as a woman, that yes, the growth hormone is declining a bit, and also estradiol's declining a bit. So yes, if you do nothing about this, if you just say, oh gosh, this is awful, I'm getting old, can't do anything, and you sit down and you do nothing, you will lose, absolutely, you will lose muscle, sarcopenia, really weak muscles, muscle function, you will get osteoporosis, 1 in 3 women, if you do nothing. But the positive message is that if you take action, right, then you can mitigate that to a certain extent, and even to some, and you can improve, right?
You can build.
Yeah, you can build. So, for example, there's a lovely study for bones, specifically done in Australia, aptly named the Liftmore study. The clue's in the name of the study. Right, in a group, they were in their 60s, women, so definitely in menopause. Divide them into 2, as you do in most studies. One group, you just say do some exercise. The other group, they were given supervised strength sessions 3 times a week, brought them back. The ones that had been exercising but not specifically strength training, as anticipated, almost lost bone mineral density, lost height. The other group, they actually gained. Well, they didn't gain height, obviously, but they maintained height, but they gained bone mineral density. So, in answer to your question, if you do nothing, yes, I'm afraid you will get osteoporosis. You are certainly at risk of getting sarcopenia and cardiovascular disease, etc. Right? Because the main killer for women after menopause, by the way, is cardiovascular disease. Okay, just been recently overtaken by dementia, but anyway, it's high up there. But also osteoporosis is the silent killer. So yeah, there is a message here that if you do nothing, yes, that's what it will be. But after you've listened to this, hopefully you're taking action in terms of the strength training, the nutrition. There are things you can do to, mitigate those losses, and even, as you say, even continue to improve.
That's what I like to hear.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of listeners are runners, so they are, hopefully already doing some things and or running anyways, and I think, I mean, yeah, we push the strength aspect quite a bit here. So what are some of the controllables other than just running? Is running enough? Are there other things that can be within our control that can help mitigate this? You've mentioned some strength work. I want to come on. Yeah, we want to focus a little bit on HRT in a little bit, but other controllables that we can use at this time. I mean, you speak around sleep and, I know sleep disruptions, but what are some of the things that females can feel empowered to now go, okay, well, I am in control of this aspect. I can do this to help me to perform better. If you want to recover from sessions faster, not feel tired all the time, run pain and injury-free, and improve your endurance, then be sure to join me in my upcoming training specifically for female runners over the age of 45. In it, I'll share with you my simple 5-step framework that'll transform your running. Simply scan the QR code on screen now or click on the link in the description to save your seats in the training now. We look forward to seeing you there.
Sure. Well, there are 3. I like to keep things simple, right? There are 3 things. Well, actually, I usually quote Hippocrates. 2,000 years ago, this chap, he was onto something. He would have been a very good coach. He said, if we could give every individual just the right amount of nourishment, just the right amount of exercise, not too little, not too much, we have found the surest way to health. I'm going to add sleep on there. So basically, it is those principles, those levers, those things you have agency over and control over. So it's the training, it's the nutrition, and it's sleep. So the training, yes, in addition, hopefully, as a runner, you're also already doing strength training. Every athlete should be doing strength training. I have to admit, I don't particularly like that at all, right? If you're not used to doing it, then it is a challenge. So if you are doing some strength training, brilliant. But remember the Liftmore study. You need to be doing purposeful strength training, if I can put it that way, progressive strength training, not just sort of vaguely doing the same thing and like at a certain level. It's got to be progressive strength training. And they say at least 3 times a week, actually, because this is this is the best anabolic stimulus. So your question, is running by itself enough? The answer is no. And I understand, as a dancer, it's like, I want to be dancing. I don't want to be doing strength work. And so runners come to me and say, oh, but surely if I just do the running, that's good enough. It's like, no. And actually, it's not just for your health, but it's for your performance. It's for injury prevention, all these sorts of things to doing that strength training. The gold standard for strength training is weights. Right, there's no doubt about that. But if you're like me, a reluctant gym and weight lifter, then again, this is sometimes women say, "Oh, look, I know in theory I want to I should be doing strength, but I hate the gym, so I won't do anything." It's like, no, hold on, let's find a solution to this.
Yes.
So doing body weight exercises, there's a study that showed that's actually pretty decent. So your planks and all that sort of stuff, resistance bands are actually pretty good, and you can do this at home, by the way. Hand weight. So, be creative and imaginative. And if the gym isn't for you, try and look at something. Something is better than nothing. So that's really the piece on the exercise front. In terms of the other lever, the nutrition. So I have a lot of athletes who come, masters athletes come, and they've noticed the change in their body composition. They don't like it. And so their reaction to that is, I will restrict, especially carbohydrates, because unfortunately carbohydrates made out to be evil and all this sort of thing. But actually, you need carbohydrate is the main fuel source for quality exercise. And also your brain uses 20% of your energy intake, by the way, and it likes carbohydrates. So I see a lot of masters athletes coming to me, and actually they probably are perimenopausal, but their main problem is actually REDS, relative energy deficiency disorder, because they have restricted, particularly the carbohydrates. So top tip is during this phase, don't restrict carbohydrate. You need some. Of course, be mindful of your portion size, but please don't restrict too much, and certainly fuel properly for any running training you're doing, so you get rid of the benefits of that running training. Fuel before, during, and afterwards. All those things should remain in place, but also increase your protein intake overall, because we're talking about those are the building blocks, amino acids for building the muscle and the bone, right? So you give the anabolic stimulus, i.e., you do strength training, you give the building blocks the protein, and so those are the 2 key things there. And then sleep. Yes, sleep is the chief nourisher in life's great feast. That's not my quote, sadly, from there. But anyway, it kind of stuck in my mind because I studied that ages ago. And it's like, well, that's really interesting. And then I realized, of course, from a hormone perspective, the reason is when you're asleep that you're releasing anabolic hormones, for example, the growth hormone. So, if you're going to bed too late, particularly because growth hormones release peak at midnight. So if you're going to bed at midnight, after midnight, you've missed the boat, sort of thing. And it helps with regulation of appetite hormones. So don't skimp on your sleep and also your recovery. You're not being weak in people if actually you need more than 1 rest day per week. In fact, I would definitely advise you do, because you get fitter when you're recovering. You get fitter when you're asleep. It's not during the exercise that you get fitter. It's when you're asleep, when the hormones are working their magic for you. And also, by the way, I've renamed recovery days positive adaptation days. I've renamed them because there's a negative connotation, I know. As a doer, we have, recovery, that's a lazy day or something like this, and it's a bad thing. But actually, no, it's a positive time of adaptation to give your hormones, which are a bit lower than they used to be, give them the opportunity to drive those positive adaptations you're seeking. So you don't lose muscle, so you don't lose bone, and as you say, you continue to perform as well as you can to your full potential.
I love that. I love the positive spin on that. Because we actually answered a question on the podcast last week around rest and recovery. Someone was asking around their training, running 6 days a week, and is they not improving, and so on. And so we spoke about rest, but somehow rest is such a dirty word, and it's just
exactly like carbohydrate.
Yes, carbohydrate and rest, because it's 2 dirty words. Absolutely. But Yeah. Nicky, did you want to ask another question, or can we move on to the HRT sort of
Let's
side?
move on to the HRT one. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think, big, again, HRT, MHT, whatever sort of word or, semantics of that. But how does that make a difference? Do all women need hormonal replacement therapy? How should we use it? Yeah, your views on that.
Well, I think the fundamentals for any woman, whether you're a runner or not, frankly, is it's still all these principles apply. Those three things, those three levers you have. So, looking at your exercise, making sure you're doing strength training, looking at your nutrition, make sure you're not restricting too much, you're eating appropriately for your needs, fueling for the work required, increasing your protein intake, and the sleep and the positive adaptation days. If that's the starting point for any perimenopausal woman. Okay, that's where you start, and you do all of this. But if you've done all of that, tick tick tick, lifestyle, but then you're still struggling a bit. You're still getting a heck of a lot of hot flushes. You're still getting a lot of brain fog. Your quality of life is impacted. Quality of life, it's that includes what is important to you. So if that is running, or if that's doing your ballet class, and you've done all these things, but your perimenopausal symptoms is impacting your ability to do that, I would count that definitely. That's impacting your quality of life because that's important to you. Some people say it's more at work, they can't concentrate, or whatever it is, or their mood is changing, so they're having a little bit of with the relationships in their family or their friends. So whatever it is, if there's still it's not quite right for you, despite doing all these positive things, then HRT is for you. As just mentioned, those semantics of the words, HRT stands for hormone replacement therapy. There are those, we use that word pretty much in the UK mainly. There are some who've got all in a flap and a tiz about, it's not replacement, it's not medical condition. So that's why MHT is favoured more in the US, menopause hormone therapy. I think, listen, it is just semantics. Let's just call it female hormone therapy, right? Yes. Because the reason I'm not so happy, I'm not so happy with either really, but I'm not happy with MHT because the thing is, sometimes for women who are not menopausal, we advise HRT. And so there's no way I'm going to say to a 20-year-old who's got premature ovarian insufficiency, we're putting you on menopause. It's just too cruel. And actually, it's not correct. That's why we call it ovarian insufficiency. And also women with REDs in their 20s, 30s, 40s, that's another indication for HRT if their bones are weak. So anyway, just to clear that little thing up.
Thank you. Yeah,
so anyway, I'll just call it HRT because I'm just so used to saying that, all right? But anyway, so HRT, it usually, and the good news is that it's for most women, it's not contraindicated. The only specific women who cannot take it and should not take it are those that have had a personal history treatment for breast cancer. I've got a dear friend in my ballet class who this is the situation. She can't take HRT. She would love to, but she can't. So that's the good news. For most women, that is a possibility. And what it is, it's a combination of the two hormones that have gone low. No surprise. So it's estrogen in some form, and it's a progestogen. And I use that word, I haven't mispronounced it. Progestogen covers all the types of progesterone-like hormones, right? Okay. Including synthetic ones which haven't got the same molecular structure as to what we produce, and those that have, those are the true progesterone ones. So the rationale is for quality of life. Well, aside from the women who aren't menopausal, that's specifically for bone in the youngsters, and POI, premature ovarian insufficiency, it's for bone and cognitive function. But anyway, specifically, we're talking about perimenopause and menopause. It is for, symptom improving quality of life. So if you've done all your things and you're still struggling, then HRT is probably for you. And now the guidance has changed. It used to be, you have to wait till you've reached menopause, your periods have stopped, and then we'll give it to you. It's like that. Well, that makes no sense if we're saying it's for quality of life. So we do often start advising starting HRT during that perimenopause. So as things are changing, makes sense. And it's particularly during that phase, it's very interesting that it's actually the giving micronized progesterone, as we call it, so the real thing, progesterone, and I use that word precisely. That, remember, that's the first hormone to drop. And so there are studies coming out of Canada. Professor Geraldine Pryor, I nicknamed Professor Progesterone, my colleague and friend, she's done a very interesting study where actually these perimenopausal women, they give them just micronized progesterone, improves their sleep, improves their vasomotor symptoms and hot flushes. Anyway, but nevertheless, what we usually do is give the progesterone, and micronized progesterone ideally is good. It's the real thing. And it has this real benefit on improving sleep and hot flushes. And then just a little bit of estrogen. So always the principle of medicine is give the lowest effective dose, right? So I would typically, especially for athletes, taking estrogen through the skin is the best way for all women. So we don't have to go through the liver. A tablet has to be processed by the liver, blah, 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 increased clotting factors, whatever. So taking it through the skin is better. And we have the choice of either a patch or a gel. And again, it's personal preference, but I think for most women, if you're active, then the gel is better, because the patch, if you're sweating a lot and I'm going swimming a lot, I just don't want this patch. And it's also quite rigid in its dose. You just have a patch and you change it twice a week, whereas the gel gives you more flexibility and discreetness, I suppose you could call it like that, right? You just put your gel on your inner thigh every morning, and then you go about your that's it, all you have to do. And there's a lot of variation in the dose of estrogen, Sandrina gel. I really suggest to the athletes I work with, because it comes in little individual sachets, like mini energy gels, if you imagine that. And the very small dose, you can have 0.5, 1 milligram, small doses. And also it's really convenient, by the way, if you're flying and you have to do the liquid bag thing, because there is a pump of estrogel, but it's just like, I'm not casting that through. It's like, oh, no way. Right? Anyway, but that's just a minor point. But in general terms, HRT can really help all women, but I think particularly, masters athletes find that helpful, provided they're taking care of everything else, like we discussed. And then the HRT, and I always, I do exactly what I've described. We start off on a very low dose of estrogen, because there has been a problem, specifically in the UK, but I'm sure elsewhere, where women have been starting on very high doses, right? Like 4 milligrams straight off. I mentioned 0.5 and 1 milligram, right? And then guess what? They feel a lot worse. They're actually feeling more anxious. But then it's very difficult. Is that the side effect of too much estrogen, or is it that truly perimenopause? And then you're on a slippery slope. It's like, oh, well, let's add more and more and more and more. So I do warn women, when we start HRT, this is how I do it. We're going to start very low. We're going to see how you go after 3 months. And then we've got somewhere to go to if we need to, right? And also to be a little bit patient. I do have lovely athletes. It's okay. They started HRT. I get an email a day afterwards. Oh, I don't feel any different. It takes some time. It takes some time. 3 months would be the minimum amount of time to make a proper assessment. Is this helping? Is it not? Do we need to? So it's all about personalizing that for the individual's needs, exactly what the dose is. But the principle is start low, and then you've got somewhere to go to, and whatever. And then the other controversy or new thing I should mention is that previously it was said, and some doctors are still saying this, oh, you have to stop after 5 years. It's like, that makes no sense. Let's think about it. Let's think about this, ladies. So you're doing all your stuff, you're taking HRT, you're feeling a heck of a lot better, you're able to do your training, competing, and now somebody randomly, arbitrarily says, now you've got to stop after 5 years. And you go back to square one. It's like, nah, that makes no sense. So, and the British Menopause Society recognize this. And so they say there is no arbitrary time limit to how long you take HRT. You just see how you go. I think, for example, I always joke that I've got this image of them prizing it out of my hand in a nursing home. But actually, in my mother's case, she's now 90 and she was taking HRT, but she just got to an age where, you know what? She's not so mobile. She's taking some other meds. It's like, you know what, we don't need this. So I think it will just naturally come to a point where you don't
phases.
need you stop, and
Yeah,
that's
that was one of the questions I was going to ask. Was, can we? Because I have a few friends that's kind of happened to, through the GPs. They've sort of said, right, well, you're fine now. But let's consider something else if you're still struggling, almost like antidepressants or something. And so they've had to kind of go private and
well, you shouldn't do that. They should not go private.
I know, and I think
you have to be strong as a woman. I think, well, first of all, of course, without plugging it too much, you can always read my book, Myths and Menopause, and one of these myths is literally unbusted. I wrote the chapter on HRT, so. But also, certainly if you're in the UK or whichever country, there will be a menopause society. So there's the British Menopause Society in the UK, and it's got a patient arm, but it's very good. And also the doctors, I know there's a lot of talk, doctors aren't trained. It's like, I don't know what medical school they went to. Anyway, but also, if you are, especially if you're a GP and you will be seeing women, then there's a really good training course British Menopause Society offer. And it says it will equip you to be able to work with 95% of women. There will be women who've got special, sort of complicating factors, breast cancer and sort of things like this. And yes, we will leave that absolutely to the experts. But it's very, very, very clear, I repeat, even on the NHS website, which again, lots of people say, it's very clear. There is no arbitrary limit. So I think anybody who's been told that is not correct. And you need to be quite tough. You need to get on the website, or you need to come and see me, or whatever it is. And you need to politely say to your GP, well, I understand that that's changed. And, just look them in the eye like that. And it's like, then it's their responsibility to produce to you the information, which by the way, they won't be able to find because it does not exist. So, you know what I mean? It is a little bit of irritation, I understand.
I think that's it. As you've hit a key there, it is really women taking a wee bit more charge on their health and what's going to help them. Certainly when I went to the docs back around 45, 46, talking about peri and menopause, I looked fit and healthy. And for them, they were just like, you look fit, you're not having hot flushes, you're fine. So every time I asked for HRT, I was turned away because I looked fine, and I eventually went private. And I know things again are changing, but I should have been a wee bit more firmer at that time, I think.
Yeah, well, it's difficult. Listen, I understand.
It is hard
because you're feeling a little bit not so good, and so you sort of question yourself. Well, maybe they're right. Maybe I am making a fuss about nothing. But this is not. This is. This is really, it's really sad to hear that.
I almost wanted it for training, like you were saying there. It was interesting because my daily life was kind of okay, and my sleep was fine. I didn't have hot flushes, all that, but I could see it in the gym work and my running, and I think they thought that was a strange thing to go in with, but I like the fact that you're saying
you
that's
do have
very
to word
valid.
it. You have to word it. This is what I coach people on. Part of it is actually coaching how to present yourself. Like people like you who sort of say, well, I guess maybe I am asking too much because it's only my training. But hold on a minute. That your training is really important, integral part of your life. So, if you quality of life is the phrase you use. And, because if you can't train well, that will make you feel really low. And that will impact, by the way, come back to influence all the other things. So, again, it's a case of wording. But, if you somehow slip in that phrase, quality of life, then, you should be heard. But I know about the perimenopause, it is difficult. And again, that's a change. Because strictly speaking, HRT is licensed for menopause. But we know that if the woman has presented herself, she's fit, she's doing everything, she's looking fit. It's like thick, great, but she's still struggling, right? Quality of life, whatever that looks like for her, then HRT is absolutely the perfect thing. And also lots of women say, oh, well, I was told I was too young to have perimenopause. It's like, hold on a minute, what's too young? And all these sorts of things. So again, with obviously, ultimately, if you're going in there wanting to walk out with the prescription, you obviously got to be somewhat diplomatic about it, I suggest. But it's about speaking, advocating for yourself, giving those keywords, and and not being shoved off, because again, the British Menopause Society and NHS says, lots of perimenopausal women still, unfortunately, getting fobbed off with antidepressants. It's like, oh God, that's not appropriate. So, I'm giving people, I'm encouraging women to take control and, look at those lifestyle factors, their training and positive adaptation days, et cetera, et cetera. But also if you are thinking, well, actually, I do want some HRT, or I want to try it at least, be prepared when you walk in, write it down and, advocate for yourself. But in a nice way. And you can even mention what sort of HRT you want, right? This is what I did. This way, in a sort of discussion with the GP, and then the GP feels like, and they're like, that was great, I did something, right? But actually, you've kind of guided. Anyway, but to be fair to my GP colleagues, I'm not saying, I'm really lucky. My GP practice actually is excellent. And so, I know there are some practices where it's very good, but unfortunately, it's luck of the draw. And sometimes there aren't. But also the other key point is, if you are going into the GP, then make sure you are, number one, all clued up and you've got all the things you want to say. But also, if possible, try and see if you can see a GP. You can ask the practice manager, is this GP a member of the British Menopause Society? Have they done the training course? Have they got a special interest in women's health? Because then you're already giving yourself, making it a little bit easier. We hope to, ultimately sort of what's going to be best for you. And also, if you live in the UK, by the way, getting the HRT, if you are opting for HRT through the GP, through the NHS, we've got prepaid prescription for just £19 a year. Because again, it breaks my heart when women have to go private and they pay a lot of money for HRT, and you can get it for £19 a year.
Yeah, wow.
I mean, that's a good thing. And also, some are, not all of them, private ones. Again, I don't want to get lots of people complaining and saying, oh, she didn't. Some private, practices, clinics are pushing so-called bioidenticals, which are not licensed, which are not regulated, and which cost a lot of money. So again, please, women, know your facts. So you make sure you're not being either fobbed off or you're being clogged something, frankly, which isn't suitable.
Absolutely. And so the next question I have ties in with this, because I see it quite often around, being tested for your hormones. Is that something that's, and I've actually had a professional, a friend of mine who's professional, say the same thing. Oh, we'll just test your hormones. And so, your views on that. I mean, again, is that valid? Is that something that we can do?
Well, I quote the British Menopause Society, and they say there is no justification for doing a hormone test, especially if the woman is over 45 and she's describing the symptoms. Odds are she's perimenopausal, right? So, but because perimenopausal is this time in flux in hormones, you could be misled. If you test the hormones, they could, you could have a good cycle, a bad cycle, who knows, right? So it's actually could be misleading.
Yeah.
Oh, your hormones are fine. It's like, they did that snapshot in time. So it's advised specifically not to do a blood test if you're over 45 and presenting with perimenopausal symptoms. I mean, you've got it in the bag, really. Yeah. Having said that, I sometimes do suggest a woman does a blood test, but not specifically for the female hormones. Actually, I want to, if I'm in any uncertainty that there might be something else going on, maybe she's got REDS, maybe she's got a genuine, if I can put it this way, underactive thyroid, then actually sometimes I would say do a blood test, but I'm not particularly interested in the female hormones, frankly, because I would have made that diagnosis based on symptoms anyway. But I just want to make sure that the thyroid is behaving itself, and the T3 is a primary indicator of RED. So I would ask for a thyroid function, and vitamin D is often missed because that's very low, and that can be a cause for you not feeling so good. And maybe I might check some micronutrients, B12 and ferritin. So a blood test, it depends. What are you testing for? And what are you going to look for? And will it change your clinical management? Testing the bloods for a woman over 45, is presenting with symptoms of perimenopause, it's not going to change your management. You're going to give the lifestyle advice, you're going to give HRT, it makes no difference. Yeah. But if the woman is indeed 45, and you think it's probably perimenopause, but you've asked her about what she's, her training load and nutrition, and it's like, I'm not, maybe there's a little bit about reds here as well. Then I will do the blood test, but I won't ask for female hormones or ask for thyroid, by the way. So you see what I mean? So I think that's really what we need to know. The other thing is sometimes it can be vaguely helpful if, for example, you think if the woman's definitely in menopause, so the hormones are now stuck, as it were, where they are, but the woman can't tell you about her periods because she's got the Mirena coil in, or she's had a hysterectomy. This would be another situation where actually maybe a blood test would be helpful, because we'll see what the hormones are doing. So a blanket statement, there is or isn't any place for doing hormones, it's always, again, it depends on exactly the clinical situation. And also the principle is it going to change your management of this person? Basically the medicine, and that's also to be borne in mind.
So it's really interesting. So if we have some 60-year-olds, maybe even 70-year-old runners out there, and they're thinking, oh, I've missed the boat here a little bit, can they start something like this?
It's a very interesting question and a tricky one. And again, I'm going to say it depends on the individual. Because you get the most benefit from HRT, obviously, in the eye of when you're in that moment. And also certainly for cardiovascular protection, although I want to stress you wouldn't take HRT just because it will lower your risk of cardiovascular disease. But nevertheless, we know it does. And it's most effective if you take it within 10 years of reaching menopause. But for the individual, I mean, it really depends. I have had a runner of 60 who was very fit and doing all the lifestyle stuff, but you can still get symptoms even 10 years after menopause, for example. And also the other thing is that HRT is the primary treatment for poor bone health, regardless of age. So for reds in the younger, for old people, for those in menopause. So for her, actually, it was on her individual situation. She had a DEXA. She did have poor bone health, right? She was otherwise all her lifestyle. She was doing the strength training. She was having, she was really on it. And so actually for her, I said, yes, I think we could consider HRT. And so she did try it. Whereas if it was, I think 70 would be pushing a bit. But, it depends on the individual, whether that's going to be suitable for them or not. But I think for runners, there would be probably more, my inclination would be, depending on the individual, to say, yeah, well, let's at least discuss it and let's explore it. And let's see what's going on, because hopefully, by definition, as a runner, they will already be covering all those lifestyle things, So, it's never too late, although it really, really depends on the individual.
Okay. I love that. My favorite answer is always it depends. So
exactly.
Frustrated with that, but it is my favorite. I can't believe the time has flown by like this. I swear we could dive into all of these topics even more. And thank you so much for your time, Dr. Keay, Dr. Nicky Keay. And any parting shots from you that you maybe want to leave our listeners with? I mean, there's been tons of golden nuggets here, but anything that you want to almost leave them with?
Well, just remember that, fortunately for the majority of us, things happen. Like we said, injuries happen, and sometimes medical conditions do crop up. For example, I developed rheumatoid arthritis and stuff like that. So stuff happens, but in general terms, even then, we do have, to a certain extent, control over our health and our performance via our hormones. So treat them nicely, right? And go with them and be aware that they do change over your life. And so, being in tune and treating them nicely, that is really the key thing. Or consider them, give them more consideration, if I can put it like that. That really will hopefully mean that you can maintain your health and continue to do what you love, if it's running or ballet or whatever it is. So that's really the name of the game.
No, awesome. Thank you so much for your time and your expertise. We often, Nicky and I have spoken about these topics a lot, and we know some things, but I mean, I learned a ton today as well. So thank you so much, Nicky. Thank you so much for your time. Any parting shots from you as we say goodbye as well?
Oh, I just love that chat. I love you've hit all the bases there. It's just brilliant, and just the key things. It's given lots of food. One little question I have just before we finish. With the HRT, they often say to take it in the morning with the squirts, but you're saying that they're released at night time.
Oh, good point. Well, what I would suggest on the timing of HRT, yeah, well, I think it's just a routine. We say the estrogen, I think it's better in the morning because it gives you a little bit of oomph for the day. So I think it's better the estrogen, you do it in the morning, right? Gel or pan. Well,
so that's
if
good.
we're talking about gel, but then the micronized progesterone, if that's hopefully what you're taking, that is always in the evening. Because that has a lovely soporific effect. So it's going to help with sleep. Because I have had some people mistakenly took the progesterone in the morning and then they said, oh, that I felt really dopey. It's like, yeah, it will do that. So make sure you take the progesterone definitely in the evening, last thing at night, have it by your bedside table, but the estrogen more in the morning. So that's an important point.
That's the way I take it. But just when we were talking about the sleep there, I was thinking, oh, I wonder if I should actually be taking a bit more at night. So no, it's really interesting. Thank you so much for your time today. And
could I say one more thing?
Thank
you very much, both of you ladies, and thanks for that question. Important on the timing of taking the HRT, really important. One other thing, if you don't mind, if I could do a selfless plug.
Please.
For the two books that you mentioned, The Hormones, Health and Human Potential. That's my first book, published 2022. And that's got, it covers lots of things we discussed, all the hormones and the different, their different actions. And then also my books are always in acts because of my ballet. So Act 1 is telling you all about the hormones, and it also dives into reds a lot. And then Act 2 is going through the phases of life and how the hormones change during your different phases of life. And then Myths of Menopause is my more recent book, which is, as the title suggests, it'll give you lots of information about menopause. And then also, if people are interested, if they want to look at my website, I do offer individual advisory appointments. So of course, we've covered a lot and hopefully a lot of detail, but as we said, it depends. It's very individual, personal hormones. And so if you're still a little bit want to know for you personally, then I offer those advisory appointments, as I call them, wherever you live. And also on my website, you'll see I've relating to reds, I've got a free, it's free, I mentioned that word, free web-based app, and it's got a little questionnaire based on our research. So it's validated against, bloods and hormones and DEXA. And you just, if you're thinking, oh, have I got reds or am I at risk or something like that, then you literally just answer 15 questions, very quick, and then automatically generated is a nice report, breaking it down to physical, psychological, physiological factors. So, some resources there for you, for listeners, if they want to delve into any of these things in more detail.
Amazing. I will get our support crew to grab those links, and we'll pop them into the show notes. And the links will be there because those are excellent resources. So cool. Thank you so much. Yeah, excellent. Well, thank you everyone. I hope you guys enjoyed. If there are questions, pop them in there. As I mentioned, the resources will be there. But yeah, really, really, really interesting. So thank you, Dr. Keay, for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you, ladies. Thank you so much.